supporter, family friend, all of the above. Allison Linney, she's the president and founder of Allison Partners. She has built her career and commitment to her clients' achievement of their goals. She's a former consultant with Accenture's Human Performance Service line, and she received her MBA from the Darton School of Business at UVA. Allison helps leaders, managers, and employees become more effective in industries ranging from consumer products to government services to publishing, and she has more than 20 years of experience in healthcare. Her expertise spans communication strategy and implementation, leadership development, and professional coaching. I'd like to welcome her as also a part of our founding group, because we wouldn't be here without her involvement in that as well. So we love you, we thank you, and welcome you. She's going to tell us or talk to us about stress management and well-being. So it's all yours, Allison.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, hello, everyone. Let's do a little checking in. So we are, first of all, everybody take a deep breath. You know?
Yes.
Goodness gracious. People think you can't do it in a mask. You can. You can breathe deeply in a mask. I know, because I coach physicians for a living, and they do it all the time. They're just glad we're all learning how to do it. So, okay, for the nature of this conversation, I'd love to stay seated and be conversational. Is that okay for the camera?
That's fine, because I told them, I said, Allison's a walker and talker. So we thought you were going to walk today, so this is fine.
Let's talk it through. So, and let's also check in with everyone to make sure we know what's happening. So are we on film now?
Yeah, I literally started.
Okay, and so we are live on Facebook? No, we're
No,
just taping.
Yeah.
Super.
On YouTube.
So one of the things, hello, I'm Allison, and one of the things I like to do is always make sure as we're moving into these hybrid zones that we understand what we're all signing up for. So we are not on Facebook, we're just taping. And so, Sister Kay, would you take a look, and do I look good?
You look fab.
Well, not like there. Do I look good over there? Come on now. I mean, if we're going to tape this.
Are you going to use the machine behind you?
No, we're just going to have ourselves, we're just going to have a little talk. What do you want?
That way.
This way?
Yeah, a little bit more.
See?
Get a little
Go
more
in front of that
center.
laptop.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
so?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Beautiful.
You like it now?
Mhm.
All right. All the people, when they see this, are going to enjoy that we had that moment together. But some of you who know my work better than others know that I also do some public speaking training, and so that work has changed in the time that we are in now, right? I call this the in-between times. There were the before times. I call that before COVID. There were the COVID times. Because I work a lot in healthcare, I'm not ready to call it the after times of COVID yet, the after COVID times, because for most of my healthcare clients, this is nowhere near over. And so they'd like it if we would hang out in this strange and uncomfortable place of not knowing how much longer we have to live this way. So I do that to honor them. I coach a lot of physicians for a living who are navigating what it means to provide care. And it's just a lot, y'all. In fact, when Kay called me, we started there. I think we chattered for 45 minutes. Somehow I talked about that, and she was like, oh yeah, that's why I called. And I was like, oh yeah, you did call for a reason. What was the reason? She was like, can you do something on burnout for the Business Alliance? And I thought, yes, I can. I'm glad. I should have asked you at the beginning of the call, what would you like to talk about?
No,
but
we jumped in. It was
we jumped like we
confirmation.
do. So my name is Allison Linney. I'm the president of Allison Partners, and we just have celebrated our 21-year anniversary. This is fresh on my mind. Thank you. Fresh on my mind because I presented this. It was a strange day. I presented to the Business Innovation Council, the Charlottesville Business Innovation Council, this morning on Zoom, so in my home office, and then I stopped by my Allison Partners office to get the materials that I needed for this, and now here I am in my first in Charlottesville masked public speaking that's being taped. I find it to be not at all a coincidence that we are moving through this arc of things today. And I'm so excited it's taped because I need this content taped for myself. So, okay. So what does Allison Partners do? We do organizational development and human resources, and kind of all the messy, complicated, wonderful people stuff that happens when we're trying to talk to ourselves or anyone else, whether it be at work or home or any other environment. And so sometimes the hardest person to coach and to hold in line is who? Yourselves, right? I don't know about you, but I would regularly fire myself if that would not be incredibly awkward for everyone who works for me, right? Like if I was just like, I'm sorry, you all should go forward without me, because I'm too tired to do this work. So I try not to do that and then take a break instead and see if I can come back to the work. Hello, Simona.
Hi,
Allison, sorry I'm late.
Oh, don't worry about it. You know it's a casual day. We are on camera today, though, so I always like to tell everybody that, just in case. Fortunately, you're not, or unfortunately, as the case may be. But that way you can think about any question you might ask publicly, because we can also have a time at the end where we turn the camera off and talk about things that we might not want taped. So that's the kind of work that we do, and have been doing it here in Charlottesville. Started in my apartment. We've had 3 different offices in town and now have one over on Monticello, and thank goodness for PPP loans during the time of COVID, because we were able to keep that office. But I also think it's important to admit, I shared this with the executive leadership of the Minority Business Alliance, one of the reasons I probably was able to get that PPP loan is because I was further along in my business and a white woman. And it's important to me that we always be candid about that, because what we know, the data is coming in now, that PPP loans were not nearly as accessible even to well-established small minority businesses as they were to the businesses of white business owners. And so it's always important to me to talk about that, which in many ways explains how I end up as a founding member. So the journey of talking about diversity and access and making sure that all boats can float up together has been something that's always been important to me because of mentors that I had, many of whom I met in the Chamber of Commerce, more than or knew about before the Chamber of Commerce, but we shared the Chamber more than 20 years ago. And when there was an opportunity to create a Minority Business Alliance, I got to work with several people and people within the city, Charlene Green, Danielle Fitzhugh, who's now running her own Chamber of Commerce in St. Petersburg. No, not St. Petersburg. Chesterfield. Yes, I was like, no, that's a different friend. Danielle is in Chesterfield. And so we established this, that we might both support minority businesses and diversify the Chamber of Commerce, because that's good for all businesses, but we are also welcome to all. And so I am not a person of color, and we do define minority in our business alliance the way that the state of Virginia does. So African American, Native American, Asian American, and Latin American. Those are the official definitions in terms of the government. But everyone is welcome here who is either joined our chamber through the Minority Business Alliance or already a chamber member and welcoming and supportive of our mission at the Minority Business Alliance. How have I done, my fellow? Is that accurate in terms of describing everything? So all are welcome, and all are welcome who are guests and friends of mine, including a friend I have down there who's a friend of my family by choice. And so many people in here who know me know that I have 3 boys, my three oldest godsons, one of whom went to the Army yesterday.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I am officially an old person, Simona. My oldest godson left for basic yesterday.
Wow.
And my friend down at the end of the table is also close friends with his mother. So that's Charlottesville for you. Okay, so that explains my business, the Minority Business Alliance. And now let's talk about why Kay had me come. So one of the topics that I have worked on for a long time, whether it was in coaching or training, helping organizations, is on this topic of how to have balance. And you will never hear me discuss it as work-life balance. So let's just pause and talk about why. Work-life balance is a construct that came out of a lot of different things that were trying to create policy in government. It was all well intended, but what's the fallacy of that work-life balance?
Work and life are 2 different things.
Like work and life are 2 different things? For most of you, isn't work a big part of your life? So I don't think juxtaposing those two things, and whatever work that may be, work inside the home or work outside the home. The people who work primarily in the home to raise families, I think, have the hardest job of all in many ways. And then the people who are doing that, plus trying to work outside of the home, like my friend across the way. You like how I'm calling y'all out but not naming anyone, so everybody, also so the people on the camera know that I'm not by myself. I actually have people, but I'm not going to call any of them by name to protect privacy. Hello, nice to see you. We're being taped, but I'm not calling anyone by name in order to protect privacy. So yes, the folks who work to raise a family and work to raise a business, that's big work, and it's all life. So I just like to call it balance. And even I have some friends and colleagues over the years who haven't liked that either, because that makes it sound like somehow we're going to get on the teeter-totter, right? And we're all going to stay like this. So whatever it may be for you, one of my favorite writers on this topic actually calls it satisfaction. If I were to ask you whether or not you would like your life to be in balance or your life to be satisfied, raise your hand if you want balance. Who wants satisfaction? That makes sense, right? We want to feel satisfied, as though it is enough. And whatever we have done for that day was what we had in mind and good enough, maybe even more than good enough. So we want to be satisfied. And the author who wrote about that, let me double check because I like to give him credit for that. It's called Out of Balance is his book, and he talks a lot off balance, getting beyond the work-life balance myth to personal and professional satisfaction. And everything that I talk about, Kay's going to help me remember, and then I'm going to prepare an email. You don't even have to help me remember. It's being taped. Yep. I'm so excited. Sometimes things come to me as I prepare, and then they come in the moment. So I will send you anything you don't have to, cheerfully take notes if you'd like, but don't feel pressure to. I'll send it all to you. So we want to be satisfied. And we definitely wanted that in the before times. And if you were figuring out satisfaction and feeling like you could handle stress management and manage burnout, maybe you had that a little bit under control in the fall of 2019, coming into the winter of 2020. Maybe you did. But if you were already in a deficit energetically, and then COVID happened, everybody take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Right? And then we did what this thing has been. And sometimes we don't pause enough to name what we've all done in however way that we've done it for the last 20 months. And we're not done yet. And so some of what I think is happening now, so this was a topic that I taught about a lot in the before times, and then it's sort of ebbed and flowed over, and it's had some silver linings, right? Have you had some COVID silver linings, some good things that have happened? And so, when my niece, when they went to online school and she was coming out of, I think back then it was 8th grade, there was a lot of mean girls. Guess what? She got away from them. And she said to me once, 8th grade, anybody who's an 8th grade girl, who's glad they made it out alive? Who wants to go back and do it? Nobody. And I bet that's true for 8th grade boys too, and our gender non-binary folks. So she said, is it bad that I'm actually glad to have a break from all the meanness? I said, no. Grab your silver lining and enjoy it for as long as you can, because the hard parts will come back, like not getting to go see Grammy for Christmas. And so it's okay. So we all have certain good things that came out of the time. But even the good things managed with the hard things, managed with the new things, we're just tired, business owner or not. And so one of the things that I think is important to do is name that. And sometimes just let it have some space to air itself out before you have to immediately figure out what to do next. And so as I thought about what do I do in this condensed time frame, in this different environment, I've brought a couple of the ideas that I say to people. If you're trying to figure out how to get to that satisfaction and manage stress and prevent burnout, here are a few of the things that almost all my clients report back. Some version of this combination, this prescription, this cocktail, if you will, usually helps them out. So I've brought sort of what I've learned is most often helpful. But I also want to talk about exactly what's going on for you if you want to. So we'll do that. But as I thought about, like, how do you talk about this at this inflection point, at this stage that we're in? And for me, it starts with naming it, pausing for a second, resting, going slower when everyone wants you to go faster. I mean, for a period of time when we came out of some of the most of quarantine, I would remind myself and a lot of other people, drive carefully. You may have forgotten how. And people would be like, you're crazy. I was like, no, for real. Do you know where your pants are? I mean, you had your pants you wore at home, but the pants that you wear out in the world, if you plan to wear them and you haven't worn them for a while, you may need to arrange to have them nearby and not hiding in that smaller closet, right? Just those kind of things.
Or do they still fit?
Or do they still fit? I mean, y'all, I'm in my suit and I feel good about it, right? Like, so, it's all working. It still fits. And that's good news. So kind of giving ourselves time for the transitions as we move in and out of each phase of life, whether it was in the before times or these times. And then doing it in a way that I hope has an incredible amount of self-compassion. I think we are too hard on ourselves. And I think that often we talk to ourselves, our self-narrative. Like, you wouldn't talk to your worst enemy that way sometimes, or it's certainly not while other people were listening, right? Like, you have enough presence of mind to know to not be that ugly in public to someone else. But there are some of the times in the week that if I could get inside your head and hear how you're talking to yourself, we should intervene. You shouldn't be speaking to yourself that way. That's not nice. If anyone knew you were doing it, they would not think it was motivating or tough love or whatever all the stories we have about that. So I'm not talking, we should still set goals. We should still try to achieve things. We should still do all the things we need to do, and we should figure out which of the ones are most important to keep ourselves and our families fed. But it also might not be the worst time to be a little bit more compassionate about what we can and cannot do. And make choices about that and be willing to at least engage in a conversation about it. And so as we go into this, wherever we are now, I want us to think hard about being as compassionate with ourselves as we would be if each of us shared our stories of what we've been through in the last 20 months. Some of it with silver linings, right? Good things. Some of it so dark that we might not ever want to talk about it, but if we could all know it, we would look at you and go, good on you for just getting up and getting here. Good job. Now, what would you like to do next? So I want us to encourage and help people achieve things, but I think we could do it with a sense of compassion and a sense of encouraging self-talk. So talking to ourselves like a good coach does. And my friend in the corner over there knows, because she's a coach, and I've got a coach over there, where we ask inquisitive questions. A lot of people think coaches tell everybody what to do all the time. We might give observations or give advice, but a lot of what we do is help you explore your inner truth. We ask questions. We help you generate new options. We help you evaluate those options. And we might even help you to say to yourself, you know what? You've been self-compassionate. but you kind of hit your limit on Oreos at night. And so I know that those Oreos were helpful in the first year of COVID, but those Oreos are beginning to have some consequences now that it feels like don't feel good. So we should think about those Oreos.
No, that's when you fire that coach.
Right, you fire that coach. Well, and the thing is that usually that kind of talk for me, when that happens, is when someone has come to me repeatedly about how anxious they are about their weight, how anxious they are about the blood work that they got back because they hadn't been to the doctor for 2 years. You know, they are all of a sudden freaking out. And then we're having a conversation about what to do about that. And then we start talking about where do we think it happened and what would it look like to, all the stuff. But even then, I rarely look at them and I'm like, yeah, if you weren't such a self-indulgent, lazy person who can't count Oreos, you wouldn't be in this mess. I rarely speak to them that way. Now, I might say, I think you've been giving yourself a lot of room to care for yourself and whatever feels good, and it sounds like maybe what you're trying to talk to yourself about is it's gone too far. Do you hear the difference? And so I'm not giving people, I'm not like, just all the Oreos. Proceed and have all the Oreos and we'll just deal with whatever happens with you 5 years from now and best of luck. I don't do that, but I do talk about it in a way that is not hurtful and hateful. And I won't bore you with all the research, but there's a lot that says, and when it comes to mental health, that being with ourselves in that space in between is a better way to achieve a good goal and a good outcome. So I want you to be self-compassionate. I want you to think about how you talk to yourself. I want you to be thoughtful about the words you use with yourself and others. A lot of times people come to one of these talks, and at the end they go, okay, Allison has told me I need to be more selfish. Words matter. Your children know what the word selfish means. You've used it repeatedly. I'm not talking about selfishness. I'm talking about self-care, care of self. Remember when we were on planes? Some of you may have tried it recently, but most everyone's probably been on a plane before. What did they tell you about the oxygen mask?
Yourself first.
And anybody who's a parent, I imagine you pause over that. You think, would I really? What? And that's part of why they say it, is they want you to think. Because they know that you need to put that oxygen mask on first before you organize taking care of everyone in the seats around you. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not encouraging selfishness, but I am encouraging thoughtfulness about how to take care of yourself that you might be able to take care of others. So that's kind of the guiding principle. The next thing I like to recommend is that I believe that we all kind of know what we need to do. We just don't always know how to do it or know what it is. I mean, sometimes we don't even know that we know, but if we can figure out ways to explore with ourselves. So, in the coming days, I want you to think about that. I imagine you know what you need to do in a couple of facets in your life to bring some of the stress down. So I'm just going to pause for a second and let you think about that. Nobody talk, but imagine, if you will, that it wouldn't be hard to do it, okay? So imagine that it wouldn't be difficult to do, that you could do anything you needed to with ease. What are the 1, 2, maybe 3, I don't want you to go bigger than that you could do to reduce your stress? And if you've got something to write with, or you like to go digital, pull out your phone. I want everyone to just think about, pretend like I could do it and it wouldn't be hard. What are the 1 to 3 things that if I could do it, I think it would reduce my stress? And when you look at those things, can you think of like one teeny tiny thing you could do that's a step in the direction of what you just wrote down? So like for me, during a lot of the pandemic, exercise is a huge part of my life. Like it's, even if it wasn't, like in fact, it's so important to me that I have to make sure I don't overdo it. It's such a good stress release for me. And it was very strange for me to hit a stage where all of a sudden my elliptical machine at home was not a source of joy for me. Like that thing is, a lot of you know Rachel Brzezinski is my vice president, and one time we were on our annual retreat and I was talking about how good the elliptical machine was at that gym, and she looked at me and she was like, okay, it's time to get one for your house. And I was like, oh, I can't afford that. And she was like, no, I think we can. But anything you talk about in this way, we need to have one at your house. And so we arranged our lives so that we could get me my very own elliptical, and not like the junky kind. Do you know what I mean? Like I went to the place where they then have to order it from the manufacturer. I mean, I love this thing. And the first time they came to service it, the guy was like, wow, you don't just hang laundry on this, do you? You actually get on it. I was like, who would pay this much and hang laundry? He was like, almost all the people pay this much, and they bring. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, do you understand this relationship I have with this elliptical? I had a point in the pandemic where I couldn't get on it, and I didn't know who that was. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I didn't even know how to help her because I'd never met her. I know her, like how I talk about myself, like she's over there, but that's what self-coaching looks like. I was like, what do you mean you don't want to get on? We don't got nowhere to go, nothing to do. And by the way, I lost weight in the pandemic. So like I did fine, you know, but I wasn't getting the cardio that I needed. And so I went through a period of time where I had to be like, name that, actually be okay with it, and I switched to much longer walks with my dog. And I went through a period of being like, this doesn't count, it's not the same thing, even though I know from working with physicians in the science that it is just as good, if not better, to go on a very long, brisk walk. My brain was holding on to this belief of how we do things. Being able to name that, adjust it, then let me gently come back to it, right? Where I could figure out a way to bring it back that wasn't just, this is how we do things and this is how we've always done things and why aren't we doing the things the way we do. So one small step for me when I needed to get the elliptical back into my life was actually to stop trying to get it back into my life and go for longer walks and celebrate them as the good thing that they were. So that's what I mean. When you look at the things you just wrote down, maybe they look a little daunting, but can you pick one small step you could take toward one of those things? And by the way, there'd be no force sharing. You don't have to share this. Just, is there like one thing you could do? One client I have who is on the Oreo journey, that's part of why I picked the Oreo story. She was like, I could think about not buying Oreos next month. Now you might be thinking, wow, you're not a very good coach. She needs to stop them Oreos right now. No, we needed to engage with the Oreos and speak to them about their power over her life. And so we started by saying, I would like to think about how to not bring them into the house. But she was not ready to do that the first month. And so I want you, do you see how little a step I'm looking for? Her first step was think about not getting Oreos at next month. So I'm going to stop talking and let you think about something that is that small. She didn't even commit to not eating an Oreo or how many Oreos. She was just thinking about what would it be like if they weren't here. And then she cried. She was like, no, I don't know. It's not going to be okay. I need the Oreos. I was like, well, what? That's fine. We can. She's like, I'm just going to think about it. I was like, okay. So I'm going to stop talking and let you think of one teeny tiny thing you could do toward one of the things you just wrote down. Dear sweet Kay, will you remind me how much more time I have?
Actually, we can have 10 more minutes.
Ooh, 10 more minutes. Lucky me. All right, so with 10 more minutes, here's what I want to tell you. If I were to pick from the variety of topics that I talk about when I do this class, trying to help people kind of return to some sense of reducing stress. And it's interesting because so much of this I do in healthcare. And one of the hardest things for people in healthcare right now is that they feel like everyone's telling them if they just breathe more and do a little bit more meditation, then we won't have burnout. And so speakers like me are often, it feels like instead of changing the healthcare system or how America thinks about healthcare, that we just keep saying each provider, each nurse, each physician's assistant, each pharmacist, each doctor, each hospital administrator, if they were all just a little better at managing their own stress, we wouldn't be in trouble. I don't believe that. Systemically, we have things to work on. But the only thing I can do anything about today is you, right? Like the good news about you is you are in charge of you. Now, if you're like me, sometimes you don't do a good job of doing what you know you should do. But if I had to pick a few things for you to try, here are the most important ones. There are a lot of people who recommend that we think about life as like it's really short, and so we should grab all that we can out of it because who knows how much longer we have. I could confess I don't find that a very helpful way to live. And in my experience, for the majority of us, life is actually quite long. Now, if you are someone who is dealing with a difficult diagnosis that has you know that life is not long, or you have a loved one who maybe is there, I know that's hard to hear. So know that I understand that there are times when life is not long. But often life is longer than we imagine. And if we can think about it as though we have plenty of time to do everything, as opposed to constrained time, sometimes it can free us up to take a breath and say, well, if I'm not going to do that for my business this year, I could do it in 2 or 3 years. If I'm not going to do this personally at work right now, I could professionally try that later. Many of the people that I helped retire 10 years ago, by helped, I mean either their organization or they individually were ready to make that move. I'd say the majority of them wish they hadn't. That this idea of stopping work is actually not all that great of an idea. If you're healthy and you like your work, I would recommend that you think about it more in terms of how long you can do it manageably as opposed to how fast you can do it and make all the money right now so you never have to do it again. And there's a lot of pros and cons to that approach. Do what you will with it, but I'm just saying that I think if we acted as though we wanted to work a long time, which is great for our brains, they might hang in there with us a little longer, and maybe we pace ourselves as opposed to being in such a hurry to get it all done now. So that's one thing. The second thing is you need to have some fun, whatever your version of fun is. And every day you should be able to do something that's fun, that's less than $5. And sometimes free. But try to remember what is fun to you and see if you can add just a bit of it into your life. When I teach this course in person, I teach it at Stanford's hospital. I've taught it now twice virtually, which in some ways was its own magic. Like special things happened virtually that wouldn't have happened in person. But the one thing we can't recreate is that we have this big space in Palo Alto where I have everybody line up over here. And then I say, everyone who would feel comfortable doing a physical activity, stay over here. Everyone who would rather observe a physical activity, go over here. So people with the wrong shoes and whatnot, they go over here, or who are like, this is too much Allison for me right now. I'll just go over. So I get choice. Then these folks, I look at them from across the way and say, okay, everybody skip. You know what skipping is? Do you remember from when you were a kid? Mm-hmm. And all these doctors come skipping across the thing. And they go from what to when they start skipping, 3 skips in, their faces are laughing, their eyes are lit up, they're giggling. And everybody else is like, dang, I should have taken my shoes off. Do you know what I mean? They look at them, 20 seconds later, skipping across the room, they felt a little smilier.
My name is Robert.
Hello, Robert. So they're feeling a little more cheerful, a little happier, a little lighter. You need to skip a little bit every day, okay? And then find a few things that bring you joy and pleasure and do a little bit of that. The next thing I would prioritize is sleep. And many of you who've been in rooms with me before know that I talk about this a lot. It's pretty much the thing from a performance standpoint that can open up the most energy for us to do everything else. I know how hard it is to achieve, to prioritize. Because I'm coming up on about 6 minutes to go, I'm not going to talk about sleep, but in my follow-up email, I will send you a blog post to everything I've ever written about sleep. It's a lot. I'll let you challenge by choice what you want to read about it. But of all the things you could do, sleep is the next thing. And if you're struggling to sleep for medical reasons or anything else, know that I get that. Call me. I can talk with you about the behavioral things you can do and then who you might want to talk with medically if those things don't work, okay? The behavioral things we call sleep hygiene. If you Google sleep hygiene, if you don't want to go to my blog posts, sleep hygiene is sort of the, and it depends on who you talk to in the sleep world. I am a compassionate sleep expert. I will tell you no caffeine after 10 a.m. I'm the nice one, okay? The real sleep people will tell you, why did you think you would sleep if you didn't have stimulants in your day? They're harder than I am. But the point is, if you have that reaction about caffeine, sit with it for a little while. It might be your Oreo, you know, and you might need to figure out what if over, and remember, if you've got to come off of caffeine, that can be very complicated. But rarely are we sleeping well if we have too intensive a relationship with caffeine. Small things like that, but they're also huge, and I get it. But sleep. And I will send you everything I've ever written about that. A technique for breathing. We do it every day. If things are going well enough in the body, we breathe, but we don't do it well. So I want everyone to just very quickly back up a little bit and shake your hands out just a little and wiggle. I mean, the joy of this is only the camera sees me. I see you, you see each other, but nobody else knows what you're doing. And I want you to take, now, Andrea, don't do that. Don't take a picture of the people. No, it's private. So, all right, now stand up real quick. And I want you to just like move around, get your wiggle on, okay? Whatever is your favorite stretch. You know you have one that's, you know, publicly acceptable. Take a big deep breath in through your nose. And you can do it in a mask. It's safe. Blow it out. Okay, take another one. And blow it out. And sit back down and uncross your legs, like put your feet flat on the ground. And just very quickly, I want you to notice how you feel. A little better, right? Like that whole thing we just did was like 30 seconds. But we don't take enough breaks. We don't pause to breathe. I'm going to send you a link to my favorite breathing activity that also has some positive self-talk in it. I'm not going to have you do it now, both for time and because it's an intense thing to do behind a mask until you've practiced doing it behind a mask, but you should know. My surgeons do it all the time behind a mask. So it's possible. I'm just not going to make you practice today, but I will send you a breathing exercise. If it does not feel like it gives you enough help in terms of stress management, sometimes you need to move into a more disciplined form of affirmations. And cheerfully, last Tuesday, I wrote the blog post I've been meaning to write for 5 or 6 years about some affirmations that helped me when I had my first panic attack at Darden, like 21 years ago. I'd never felt worry before, but at the point at which I thought I'd lose my scholarship because I'd get less than a B-, all of a sudden I was like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. Like, I don't like this. And you know how there's a road named Leonard Sandridge? Mm-hmm. Well, he'd written my letter of recommendation to get in. I didn't get in the first time. So when Leonard Sandridge and John Castine, a former president of the university and a rector of the Board of Visitors, write your letter to get into Darden, and you get a flat out sorry. Mm-hmm. It's like you don't like math. Please take accounting and statistics and try again next year. So I did that, tried again next year, got in, went from rejected to a full scholarship. Sounds like a cheerful story, right? Until come first semester, and those who know me well know, believe it or not, now believe me on this, I don't like to work very hard, which I know you're thinking, that can't be true, you own a business. No, it's true. It's a constant struggle to do enough for me, because my hard wiring is laziness. And I mean, don't tell me it's not true. I'm telling you a truth about myself. It is, and I have to overcome that, which is probably why I teach this. Like, I'm already starting at like a calmer place. So anyway, I had my first panic experience. That was really overwhelming. Fortunately, well, unfortunately for my mother, she had struggled with anxiety a lot over my childhood, so she knew a lot about it, and had overcome it and managed it. She still has to manage it. So anyway, the blog post I wrote last Tuesday is both about anxiety management, that story, and how the Braves won the World Series. Because, you know, those of you who know me know that it wouldn't be my first public presentation if I didn't talk about the fact that the Braves won the World Series after 26 years, and one of their best pitchers overcame one of the most severe experiences of anxiety in order to achieve what he did. So I wrote about all that last Tuesday. So I'll include that. It has the breathing exercise, and then if you need a little bit more, the stress management. And then the other thing to remember is, please know that just as we take care of every other organ in our body, our brains need care. And that means that sometimes we may need more than a coach. We may need therapy, someone who can really help us to navigate the complex organ that is our brain. And that is incredibly important. The last two things I want you to know are that, one, you will probably need to say no. I don't know to who, I don't know about what, but no is incredibly important if you want to get your life into balance. If your life feels out of balance, it is most likely that somebody around you has come to appreciate your level of service. It's not that they wanted your life to be out of balance, it's just that you're so good at doing that thing you take care of, and you may need to manage that with them. And the last thing is, you need to vacation. And when you vacation, you need to figure out how to not check your email. It is possible. I have helped many people learn how to do it, and I will include some blog posts that will help you with that. On that note,
Thank you, Allison. Excellent. Everybody good? Mm-hmm. Everybody took something away, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
She talked about our business. You were all up in the business. Thank you, Allison. I have lots of notes. I will leave it to one of us to figure out what of those we may need to post something. I just posted something.
okay,
Put your name on it.
got it.
So we're gonna